Hi, I'm Supermoon Tarot, and today you are cordially invited to the Spiritual Awakening Corner, where you can cry, you can freak out, and you can ask, what is going on? Because I'm going through a spiritual awakening, you're going through a spiritual awakening, your mom's going through a spiritual awakening, we're all going through a spiritual awakening, which is why I feel it's so important to talk about it now. And clearly you guys did too, because this was a highly requested video, and anytime you guys want to request a video, I am happy to do it. So definitely let me know in the comments if there's anything else you want me to talk about, because I plan to do more videos like this as well as tarot videos. Today we're going to be talking about what is a spiritual awakening? What are some of the signs you're having it? What do you do during this spiritual awakening? What happens afterwards? We're going to be covering all of that today. First thing I want to talk about with spiritual awakening is the misconception. Most people think spiritual awakenings are this like happy butterflies and rainbows. You see the world in a whole new way. And there is an aspect of that that's true. But it certainly does not look like that on the outside. It's a lot more difficult, rough, and very emotional to go through. It can kind of make you feel like you're losing it, to be honest. And I want to talk about how normal that is and what's actually happening so you feel like a little more comfortable and secure and a lot more safer as you go through this process. First, let's tackle what is a spiritual awakening? Many people view it as waking up to life. It's about understanding and then becoming closer to your higher self. It's about seeing the world around you, your old habits, in a very clear, direct way than you did previously. It's a huge perspective change. People often describe this experience as well as the aftermath as very surreal, and realizing kind of the lies you've been told or thought you had to conform to before you went to the spiritual awakening. People often realize they don't need to do what everybody else is doing, and that ideas like the self and even the world around you is an illusion, and there is far more beyond this. Now, I do want to mention that spiritual awakenings are not a one-time thing. It's very common to go through them multiple times in your life, and you're constantly healing and evolving. So don't expect this to be the last, but if you can identify it better and deal with it, it will make it an easier process and something you welcome rather than fear. Now you might be asking yourself, why is this happening? Now, a spiritual awakening can be triggered from pretty much anything. Often it's a big life event that triggers this, so it both good and bad. It can be a very small thing that kind of sets off a series of dominoes, because during your spiritual awakening, you're becoming truly connected to who you were meant to be and who technically you could see it as who you've always been, and you're just kind of realizing it now and how you fit in the world, so to speak. But often, not always, but often spiritual awakenings can happen in conjunction to what is called the dark night of the soul. Very young adult fantasy book sounding. And essentially this is a time period when you feel anything but spiritual. You're completely disconnected from yourself, from the universe, even the potential idea of, spirit guides and things like that. And essentially, this is great. This is a purging, a cleaning out, totally preparing you for then this huge connecting, feeling totally entwined with the universe, that it's overwhelming process that is the spiritual awakening. The main thing that I've noticed when I've looked around, because so many people are experiencing this, potentially could be because of what is called the 5D jump. Now, you're going to have to read up about this on your own, because it's too much to explain in one singular video or small segment, but it's the belief that everything we know and see and how we perceive the world is the third dimension. And the fifth dimension, think of it as like layered on top of itself, so it's like we're shifting. We're not traveling anywhere. I mean, technically the belief is you're traveling in your mind to that version of yourself, but essentially we're shifting perspectives. And on the fifth dimension, everything is experienced and expressed much more intuitively and with your feelings. And this is kind of like we're being prepped for this jump, essentially. This is all in the mind. This is all spiritually. We're not going anywhere. I mean, technically we are, but you're not going to notice it in that kind of way. So you're basically being given the exercises and the tests to understand and be able to do this in order to skip and jump, because a lot of people believe that the 5D jump is happening right now. And especially with everything going on, with this much isolation, you're forced to look at yourself and therefore ask some pretty tough and deep questions you might have not had the time or given the importance to before. Signs that it's happening. This is an extremely long list that I put together because I wanted to cover as many symptoms as possible so that, there is a potential of things that I've experienced that you haven't experienced. And this is an important thing to remember, not only in spiritual awakenings, but spirituality in general and life in general. Not one person has all the answers. What I've experienced is not what you've experienced, and what you've experienced is not what I've experienced. And that's a beautiful thing. So if there's something that you've been going through that you want to share in the comments, please do, because that will help other people not feel so alone, because we all go through things different than one another. But these are the most common ones, so you can best identify, like, I'm going through a spiritual awakening. This makes so much sense now. You know what I mean? Some of the symptoms include anger, frustration, mood swings, not feeling connected to your body, questioning everything, seeing repeated numbers, an abnormal amount, feeling lost or alone or directionless in life, becoming highly sensitive, seeing synchronicities everywhere, feeling like life is fake or false, like you're in a movie or a picture book and it just doesn't seem to make sense anymore. Dizziness, fluctuating energies, being able to see old habits, both good and bad. Soul searching, wanting to purge your life of the things and people that don't serve you anymore. Conversations feeling shallow or not having the same kind of depth that they once did. Increased psychic abilities, lights flickering, ears ringing, being able to sense or predict things before they happen. Feeling and seeing everybody's pain, and then wanting to detach from society and have an increasing amount of isolation. What to do during a spiritual awakening? Because once it starts, you kind of don't really have a choice. You just have to go through it. But this will help it be more of a experience, like something you're going to get out of it, rather than really, falling into a suffering sort of mindset. The number one thing you can do is be nice to yourself. If you're not feeling great and you feel all over the place, don't be mean to yourself because of it. Say, I see you're going through a tough time. I know it's hard. Be your own best friend, which then leads me to my next point. Lots of self-love and a lot of self-care. I'm talking like way above average. You should be giving yourself a facial every night. You should be constantly doing things that either bring you joy or at least make you feel like yourself as much as possible. This definitely includes things like journaling or potentially going for a walk. For now, a walk around your parking lot or your neighborhood. You know what I mean? Be safe. Definitely try listening to frequencies or some singing bowls. Both can be found on YouTube for free. Meditate. I cannot speak about this enough. Meditation is life, and it seems to be the solution to so many problems and issues. And this is a great way to buy time, but better understand what's happening, because you're basically going through an intensive form of like seeing every shadow version of yourself that you weren't able to deal with before, questioning life in a way you didn't before. And it's kind of like so much is being condensed in a short amount of time. So being able to slow down, view it from an observational perspective, but also being able to face it rather than avoid it is going to make the process a lot easier, and you're going to get more out of it, which leads me to my next point. Avoid spiritual traps. And what I mean by that is there's a list of them, but the biggest thing is like trying to use positivity or like, oh no, I'm okay. I just got to think more positive, or I just got to be more grateful. These things are wonderful and totally, you can have them in your practice, but don't avoid what your body and your soul is trying to ask you to overcome and solve and understand, because it's not going away and you got to deal with it. And that is just putting a band-aid over a house falling apart. And you can totally renovate it and make it the best house ever. So it's not a scary thing. It's a really positive opportunity. Shadow work is wonderful. I've said this many times before in my videos, but shadow work is identifying your shadow self, which is things like jealousy and anger, and saying, when did I feel that? What event happened? And then you write down on a piece of paper, I felt jealous when maybe someone flirted with your significant other. And then you say, well, why did that upset you? And the next line would be, because I didn't feel good enough. And then the next line is like, well, why don't you feel good enough? Because of this, this, and this. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper until you get to the core issue. And then you forgive and you love yourself, or you practice, like maybe you don't trust yourself. Practice trusting yourself. And last but not least, I think it's really helpful to read books from people who have been through these processes, or just like philosophy books, spiritual books in general, self-improvement books, anything that can, sometimes it's very cathartic just to hear, oh yeah, I felt that too. Or sometimes they can give you a strategy or a perspective change that you need in that moment. And it's like the healthiest way of facing the issue at hand. Either way, don't run away from it. Hug it. Let it in. Welcome it. Think of it as something that, like, the quicker you face it, the easier and faster you'll go through it, rather than letting it plague you. Aftermath. You've been through a spiritual awakening. Now what? Well, for some of you, you've put in the work, you've gone through it, and now that you're done, you're not really practicing what you've learned or exercising those new perspectives or new habits. So you just kind of somewhat return to a version of your old self. Not exactly, obviously, but you're just somebody who went through spiritual awakening, because these things can only exist if we continue to reinforce them. So that option is always there if you don't want to maintain this new perspective. But for others, you have a more concrete sense of self because you're more aware of yourself. You're more aware of yourself, you're more aware of the world, and you're more aware of others, often exhibiting a greater sense of compassion or even empathy. You take things less sensitively because you can view the world in a more observational manner, and because you're more in tune with the universe and its frequencies. Expect an enormous amount of synchronicities. Manifesting becomes a lot easier. You just feel alive. That's why people describe it as waking up. When you do good things for yourself, they have a greater effect because you've unlocked and unblocked anything in your way, and therefore it's able to receive whatever nice things you're doing for yourself. And yes, you can have enhanced psychic abilities. But again, this just depends on what you've discovered and if you continue to practice it after you've gone through the spiritual awakening. So I thought I would share a little psychic thing that's been happening to me that I've been continuing to practice as I've been going through my own spiritual awakening. So I react to things now before they happen. And I don't mean as in I see it, I predict it, and then there it is. I mean, like, I'll gasp and then, out of the way, somebody will drop something, or I will stop mid-conversation, stop and turn as if I've heard something, when you hear something shocking, and then that shocking thing is said. So it's like my body knows what's going to happen next and is already reacting before it's even happening, and then I can perceive it and then even acknowledge how I want to react. So yeah, psychic abilities can come in a multitude of unusual ways, and it's fun when you start to realize them, and you can give them power and you can keep them past the spiritual awakening. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out the channel like you would not believe. I especially want to hear from anybody that's currently going through a spiritual awakening or has in the past. It's incredibly helpful for other people, but I mean, it's helpful for me too, because we all have something to share and something that only we have our own perspective on. so it's important to put that out there and then build upon it. If you liked this concept and these ideas, please feel free to suggest any other type of video topics you would like me to talk about, because I love tarot and I'm going to keep doing it. But these other topics for me are interchangeable with tarot, so I'm going to incorporate them more on the channel. Also, thank you. Thank you very, 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 very much for being so nice to me. Anytime you guys have ever given me anything, whether it be your energy or your comment or your trust, or some of you guys have been really nice and have tipped or something like that, it's incredibly appreciated, and I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world. So I hope it was okay that I showed my face. I'm actually, this is like a side tangent, I'm actually pretty shy. I have very large time periods in my life where I have no photos of myself for like a couple years. So this is not something I wanted to necessarily do, but I decided to just kind of get over it, because these topics are more important to me, and connecting to you guys and helping in any way I can is more important to me. So hopefully it was nice seeing my face. I enjoy seeing yours and your little profile pictures and hearing the words you have to share. So I'm wishing you a great day and a great spiritual awakening. I will see you in the next one, and I look forward to. Bye!